Hello, theme park enthusiasts, and welcome back to Planet Coaster. In this episode, I'm starting what, to date, is my most exciting project in Planet Coaster. I'm going to build my own park, completely off of my ideas, not something I've seen somewhere else, inspired in part by different parks around the world, but definitely my own designs overall. So welcome to Appleford Amusement Park. Now, in this episode, I'm going to cover a little bit about Appleford Amusement Park because there is a reason I've created this park the way that I am. During this particular episode, I'm going to go ahead and install the first ride in Appleford, which is going to be the Monster, this wooden roller coaster that's going to go through the middle of the park and sort of be the focal point for the park. I've gone ahead and recorded all of the footage beforehand here, as this ride I've really spent some time working on. You are going to see other things pop up in the background at points because I have been working on the park overall as I've been going along here. So just do keep in mind I will be covering all those different events, different rides, different accessories to the park during different videos about the Appleford Amusement Park. But for now we're going to focus on the Monster. So as I said, the Monster is sort of the focal point of Appleford Amusement Park. It's going to be the tallest ride here, I believe. It's definitely going to be one of the older rides in the park. And with that in mind, I wanted it to sort of make that statement piece. One of the things that's going to take a long time with this ride, or did take a long time while I was making this ride, was that I decided for some insane reason lighting was going to be very important to me in this park, and I wanted to have lights all the way along this ride. So instead of just doing some underlighting to it, which I do, I went ahead and also added in fairy lights all the way along the track, which you'll see at the end because I will give you an on-ride POV at night. But that lighting took days to do. It was really a challenge. So let's go over Appleford Amusement Park a little bit here. As I've mentioned in other videos, I am a horror author. I enjoy writing horror. I've done so since I was a young kid, actually. And currently, I'm working on a novel that I do hope to get published in the next year or so. Along with that, I'm working on a set of short stories that I'm going to put into an anthology, which I'm hoping to publish sometime around June of this year. And one of the focuses of both the novel and some of the short stories is going to be a town that I've created that's going to be in New Mexico up in the mountains. That town is going to be named Graves Point, and outside of that town, I wanted to create an amusement park. That is the inspiration for Appleford Amusement Park. And I feel like I'm sort of combining two of my passions here, my passion for video gaming, and particularly Planet Coaster, as well as my passion for horror. And so doing this park, creating it as I have been, has inspired me in my writing, and my writing is inspiring me to be more creative in the game as well. So they're sort of working off of each other in this way that's really been quite fun for me. With that in mind, as I said, the rides in this park aren't just sort of slapped together without any thought. I've really thought about the park layout and how I want everything to be. I wanted the Monster, even though it's not going to play an enormous role in the story itself as far as being symbolic, I did feel like it was this main focal point of the park, and I will say that in the story, by the end of it, this ride does get destroyed. It will catch fire and burn. But that's actually really important to what's going to go on later in, hopefully, the series. There is another ride that I will be putting into the park here in a couple of videos. It actually is one of the rides that I've spent the longest in Planet Coaster working on ever, that really I took some time to get to know how to do the ride and to make sure that it looked perfect. That ride is going to be focal to my story about Appleford Amusement Park. But as we're watching the coaster being built here, I'll give you a little bit of background on what my plan was for this story series. So the park is going to be owned by Joseph Appleford, a mysterious figure that originally created the park at the time period that this roller coaster came in. So we're talking early 1900s. I'm thinking sometime around the period of 1917, a coaster like this may have been built. I will probably do a bit more research, so the date may change some. But as I said, I wanted this very traditional, old-fashioned wooden coaster. Yes, I have modified it some by having the curves to it and such, but I feel like those are the kind of things that could have actually occurred later on in time, that the ride probably has been adjusted, modified, gotten retracking done to it, everything of that nature as time has gone on. So with that in mind, the original skeleton of the ride has been there since the early 1900s, but the ride itself, the ride experience, is much more modern than that. The thing about this, though, is Joseph Appleford is not just the creator of the park and somebody who has passed away years and years ago, but in the story series, and I will get into that more when we get to the ride in particular in question, Joseph Appleford is still alive. Well, he still exists. I'm not sure you could say that he's still alive. But there is a reason that he still exists, and the ride in question is a major portion of why he still exists. So, as I said, I will save more of that story for a later date, but it is going to be significant to the park as a whole. And as I said, this being sort of the centerpiece of the park, I really felt it was essential for this ride to be sort of established and put in place before a lot of the other things that will go on in the park. So I spent a lot of time here trying to get the track exactly as I wanted it. As you've seen, I've done a few rides on it to make sure that it's what I wanted. I got the overall look pretty much exact here as I wanted. I wanted a lot of airtime to this. So we've got almost a 200-foot coaster, nice big airtime hills, some fairly sweeping curves to it. I wanted to go through the woodwork there as we did, and as I said, I decided early on I wanted to go ahead and light the whole thing. So here I'm just trying to adjust this center portion some. I realized, you know what, I want a brake run in the middle here, or a block brake, so that way I can have a second train run smoothly on the circuit. So that's what I'm putting in here. Doing most of the work in pause because I really don't feel like wasting years of time in the park for no real reason. And I do want to open the park fairly quickly so that way I can have guests in the park while I'm still building different rides. I enjoy sort of seeing the guests, hearing their screams on different rides while I'm working on new ones. So that's going to be a thing. I basically wanted to get this ride, the focal ride to the story itself built, and a few other small things. Then I wanted to open the park. And I can say right now, I've probably already spent a month of time on this park. And at this point, I'm pretty much at the time where I'm now feeling good about opening the park as a whole. You can see here, I've created the ride as I want it. Now I can move it around to where I want it to be. I did design this overall layout for the park, so basically they cross this bridge to get into the park area. In my story, basically my thought process is there's going to be a tunnel there, and the parking and such is going to be on the other side of a road that the tunnel is going under. So you go ahead and pay before you enter the tunnel to get across here and stuff. In the game itself, I actually have it where you pay per ride, but the reason I did that isn't for story as much as it really is that I felt that paying per ride means that I will have guest turnover. If I don't have it where you pay per ride, I found that the guests, if you just pay at the gate sort of thing, the guests will just stay in the park forever. You won't have new guests coming in, and so it doesn't really look that realistic. So with that in mind, I wanted to go ahead and ensure that I would have guests coming into the park and such. So I do charge per ride. I put in things such as ATMs and such so that people can get more money as they need it and such. Here you can see I wanted to make sure that I could get my pathways under the coaster. Definitely wanted people walking through the structure. I wanted a lot of play in this park with this structure. You will see other rides in the park that play around with the structure, everything of that. Because as I said, really this is sort of that focal feature for the entirety of the park. I was really happy with the way it came out here, and as I said, I think that having it where people walk through and such as they do makes it more engaging, and it's one of those that people would walk through this structure, see the train going along, and want to jump on to ride, which is something I really wanted. even though I do know that I'm making this as part of a fictional series that I'm writing and stuff, I do always want to create a park, and especially for something like my fictional series, with the mentality that this would be something that people may end up, experiencing in real life one day. And I wanted to make sure that it was a park that people would be engaged in going to. So I wanted to make sure it had everything that people would need, and that it was something that people would enjoy. With that in mind, as I said, this park is very different than all the other things I've done in Planet Coaster to this point. I've done some recreations, which have been to varying levels of success in my mind, but I really wanted something this time that was very unique and different. So you're going to see, like in the station here that I'm going to build, it's going to be very different than things that I've done in the past. I wanted something that was actually much more than just a simple square building. Yes, in the end it does have somewhat squared off sides, but I did want something that went ahead and had different accessories to it. And in a video that will come out in a couple of weeks, you'll see that I actually redo and add to the interior of this building. Because, as I said, I've been jumping around in the park. I was working on this, I would get tired of doing the lighting on this structure overall, so I jumped to work on one of the other rides that I sort of had in progress. And I've done that for probably the first 3-4 major rides, as well as the structures that go along with them. Now I'm at a point that, as I said, the park's pretty much ready to open to guests significantly, and now I'm at a point where I can start saying, okay, I'm going to work on this building or this shop or this ride one at a time and go through them in order to build them up. But I wanted to get a bunch of different features into the park to start with here, and as I said, it was something that was really important to me, so there is some jumps in the video because I wanted to go ahead and work on different things all at the same time. Here you can see, as I said, I really did care in this park about having lighting being a big thing. I wanted it to be somewhat old-fashioned, so I loved using this lettering for it. Wanted to put these letters up onto the actual structure themselves, and I will do this for a lot of the major rides in the park. We're going to have them with the names of the rides actually on the structure, so that way it can be seen for miles and really engages the people who are going to come into the park. You can see here that I'm going with sort of a purple and gold color scheme for the park. It was something that I thought really fit for what I was wanting to do here, sort of what I would consider sort of royal colors. And as I said, the story of Joseph Appleford that I will get to more in later videos, there's going to be a point to him wanting these sort of royal colors and such. So I thought that was something that would really work well. I do end up changing the purple in a future video because it just wasn't the purple that I really wanted. So you will notice in one of the videos, the color scheme does significantly change. The gold stays the way it is, or the yellow, but the purple will change dramatically. And I'm really much happier with the new purple that I found than this original one. So here, as I said, I wanted to do something very different than I've done before. I didn't want sort of an external queue for this ride. I wanted it to be all internal. So I've gone ahead and started building the floor out because I didn't want just a simple queue line and exit to it. I wanted something that actually fit into the building itself. And I will say, this park has been a real learning experience for me. Yes, I have played through all of the scenarios, including the Ghostbusters, and I have gone ahead and built a couple recreation parks. But I really didn't feel that I've gotten that good at the game until now. And I feel like now, I'm no way saying that I'm good at it yet. I'm still very much learning. But I will say that my skill, I feel like, is improving dramatically as I'm going along with this park. Each building, each ride that I'm working on, I find that I'm getting new tricks and new ideas and new ways of building that I hadn't previously. And with that, I hope that you will see during this series something that really starts to come together as quite impressive. I can tell you already that because of my novel series and where I know the novels are going, this isn't the last park I plan on doing that's going to be related to Graves Point. There's going to be something much more grandiose and much larger in size that I have planned for the future. But this is toward the early series, or the early portion of the novel series. And with that in mind, I wanted something that was fairly simple. So I went with what I would consider sort of a traditional amusement park here. And with it being a traditional amusement park, I felt like I was a little bit safer in that. I could work on rides and stuff, but I didn't have to worry about them being as detailed and as themed as things might be in, say, a theme park, for example. So with that, I wanted to go with something fairly plain here, and you're going to see in some of the buildings I will talk about in some of the videos, things are intentionally plain the way they are. This building, for example, here, I'm using the painted wood, and you will see that I'm going to use some haunted house wood at points as well here. And the reason I went with that isn't just because I wanted it to be a certain color scheme or anything of that nature. I wanted it to seem very worn almost. Yes, this is a park that the owner takes some pride in, and I do want it to be nice in a way. But I also want it to be showing some age. I want it to look weathered. I want it to look like a little bit of the paint might be peeling and such. That things are just not quite perfect. Because this isn't in any way a theme park. I don't want it to be a Disney-style event. I want it to be something where there definitely is a budget to what he's doing. And with that budget in mind, he has to make compromises as to how things look. Yes, there's going to be all the supernatural involved in the story and everything of that nature, but I do want a realism to it that comes with the reality that, yeah, even though there's something very wrong with Joseph Appleford, money is not that thing. He doesn't have unlimited funds, and so with that in mind, he only can build a park that fits within his budget. So, I feel like, as I said, this building does get some revisions to it, as you will see in later videos. But I'm very happy with the way it even started out here. I thought that it really came together fairly well here. Here you can see, as often happens in Planet Coaster, I'm struggling with the walls a little bit. They're not exactly lining up the way I wanted them to. So I have to keep trying to adjust them here, figuring out what I can do to make them work a little bit better. And definitely the wooden structure doesn't make that at all easy, so I have to go back and forth through it, play around with it, figure out what I can do. Finally, I get something here that pretty much works the way I want it. It made me fairly happy for the time. As you're going to see here then, we'll go ahead and start putting in a roof soon enough, and we'll work on lighting and design on the building. Now, as I said, I wanted this, especially this portion, to be very, what I would consider old-fashioned. It's not particularly based on any specific park in the world with this building. It's not inspired by any specific park. I just wanted something where we had sort of very old-fashioned lighting, some old-fashioned theming on the building, just some ornamentation that I felt like stood out slightly, just gave the building sort of an old world look, yet sort of a happy feel to it. Here I'm just going through and setting up the drink station and such that I had put inside the building. As I said, I wanted something here where the buildings are not just an entrance and an exit to a ride. I wanted them to be more than that. And originally here I was like, okay, I'll put this side area to it where it's going to have a drink shop and a burger shop and a restroom and a first aid, so that way if anybody gets nauseous or anything on the ride, they can get right off and go use this. What I discovered as time went on was that it works, but not quite, because even though they're in the same building, right now as you see it, it is still its own area of the building. It's not connected to the ride itself, and I feel like that was a flaw that I had in this initial design, and it is something that I do go on and correct in the future. Here I'm just putting down a very basic roof because, as I said, I really want to focus on the ornamentation of the building. So we get a roof in place. I knew I wanted some different designs and stuff on the roof. Here I wasn't happy with the fact of the way that the roof doesn't quite align. Trying to figure out how to make that work. End up taking it off. And as I said, I think with this park, one of the things that I hope will come across in the video is I've taken more time overall because to me, I really want this to look a very specific way. And I'm willing to take the time to make that happen, even if it means that I have to redo things over and over until I get them just the way I want them. I'm alright with that. As long as it's moving forward and as long as I'm sort of getting that payoff that I'm wanting out of it, that's fine by me. So here, I got it to sort of look the way I wanted, struggled with getting these roof pieces in or these upper wall pieces in exactly, but I was able to finally wrestle it into place, and then I was able to put the roof back in and get it sort of where I wanted it. Not exactly sure what I'm off doing right now. May have been talking to my fiance for a moment, or having her look at something. Alright. As I that went on a little bit longer, I would have gone ahead and paused it. But yeah, we go ahead and put in the roof here, and here we can sort of see I'm using the haunted house flooring for this, or the flat roofing from the haunted house. And as I said, there is an intentionality to this. I wanted it to have that weathered edge that it has. I really sort of like the idea that yes, it's this nice building, but it does have this wear and tear to it. It does have this worn nature. And I wanted it the way it is here, where for the guests, for the most part, they won't notice it, because when you're on the ride, you're running around this large expanse, dropping down hundreds of feet, so you're going to be screaming your head off and not noticing too much. And for the guests that are on just the actual floor level of the park, you won't see this the way we are. But I like the fact that I could add in this little bit of detail here, where there's just something wrong about it. It doesn't look quite right. The money hasn't been spent to sort of fix what's going on here. And I went back and forth then with this sort of artwork here, or this little detail, and debated if I wanted to put it up higher to sort of hide that worn edge of the top of the building from the guests or not. But I decided in the end I sort of liked it the way it was, because that way it does give that hint of there being something wrong, while at the same time not really highlighting that there's that something wrong. Inside you can also see that worn nature, which again, as I said, I really like that. Here I was playing around with different lighting, trying to figure out what it was that I liked the most for the park. As I said, I sort of know what I want in the park, but as far as the actual design details, that's where the game is helping me with my writing, because it's bringing the overall story to life for me, and it's allowing me to then envision the park as this living, breathing entity. So I went ahead and I chose these two styles of lights for right now. I feel these will be good. These taller ones here will be good for the outside, and then those other ones would be good for the interior. I do end up changing my mind a little bit over time. As I said, this park is sort of my experimentation, my place to play around with these ideas and see what I really like for my stories. Yes, I know what the ride is going to be like and how I want it to look, but how the actual stuff on the interiors and the actual design details of the ride will work, that I'm not positive of. And that's something that the game itself is allowing me to play around with. Looking back at this area now, knowing how it's going to change in the future, it's one of those that I'm really glad I made the decision to go ahead and change it, because I just wasn't happy with this. I'm not happy looking at it now. My problem with it is, even though I'm getting at the idea of what I wanted here, as I said, it is really its own separate building here in a way. It's just attached to the other building. And the other thing is, I didn't really make the pathways work at all the way I wanted. I want the paths to be very natural, and here it just looks like there's a floor underneath pathway. And that's not what I wanted. So I'm glad that I went back ahead and modified that. I'm happier in here with the way it is, with the queue and such, because yes, there is this portion of the queue that goes up, but that is for the ride. It has to be that way. But I like the fact that most of the queue is sort of along the floor there. It's sort of got that little ridge to it, which just is highlighted. Just sort of shows where you're supposed to walk while you're queuing for the ride, but that it's not really stood out from the ground the way it was in the other room there. So here for now, I just put in some very basic walls and such, just to give structure and to sort of wall off the actual ride area here, just so people can't hurt themselves for the most part, because I do always keep that in mind. Yes, this is a park where very bad things are going to happen, and as I said in future videos, I will go over what that story is more and more, but I want the bad things to be of a supernatural disposition and not just a guest randomly falling off of an area because there wasn't proper safety equipment. That is not something Joseph Appleford would want going on in his park. He wants people to come to the park for a very specific reason. He doesn't want guests just randomly dying and thus ruining the reputation of what he has going on here. As you can see, I am struggling a little bit. This, as I said, is probably the second or third day that I had been working on this park, and I'm still struggling with getting used to working inside of buildings and getting kicked out of the buildings and such. Here I make a mistake that I really regret. As you can see toward the upper right of the screen, I am still technically working on the building. So as I'm putting all these trees in, the trees are part of the building here. And it's something I still haven't gone back and taken away from the building. It will take a while to click on all these trees and remove them from the actual quote-unquote structure. It's something that annoys me, but it's not something that I'm willing to spend the time currently going to do. I'm more focused on working on the park. It may be something I do in the future, or, I do plan on publishing this onto the workshop. If it bothers somebody else, they can go ahead and remove the trees from being part of the building. But for right now, yeah, all these trees that I'm putting in are technically a part of the building. And as you can see here, I go back and forth, as I said, playing around with things, jumping back and forth to, okay, I want to put on lighting here onto the building now, working on that detail more. Here, most of the lighting throughout the park is going to be the twinkle lights, or the fairy lights as they're called in the game, but they're going to be the ones that are continually on. For the ones on the building here, as I said, this is one of the earliest buildings in the park, that's why I created it first, and I went with the ones that do flash on and off, because again, I sort of wanted that feel of, something's just not quite right here, something isn't always functioning the way it should be with this park, so that it makes the guest question just slightly, not enough to really worry and run away, but just slightly that maybe there's something wrong going on. Here I have another one of those edges with the roof. It does bother me, but it was one of those that I think I end up leaving at least for the time being because I just couldn't do anything with it. I think in the end I do end up coming back and actually adjusting that wall so that that roof doesn't do that. But at this time I really just sort of left it alone there so that way I could work on more theming out this ride some. As I said, this was early on in the process of building this park. You can see here I'm still really working on getting used to the controls and doing anything sort of detail oriented. I keep just putting these down one at a time. Later I will learn to, copy multiple things, and so that way I can put them, like I could have copied several of these and so put them down as a group instead of just doing one at a time here. Would have saved myself some time, made this a lot easier. But as I said, this has been a process for me. I've been learning as I'm going along here, and it's really sort of been a fun process to learn. It has taken a lot of work. As I said, each of these rides, right now, I believe, as of the time I'm recording this audio, I think I have 4 rides in the park, and I've probably spent almost a month working behind the scenes just on getting those 4 rides to where they are and getting them sort of ready for the park to open. It's an enormous amount of time. It's much more than I have spent on other parks in the past, and I'm hoping that the final product really shows that. I really hope that it's something that is not only appreciated, but also something that people just think really fits what I'm wanting in the story in the end. And that's what's going to be the most important to me, is that this park is something that people could see actually working in a horror story. And so hopefully that will come across. Only time will tell, I guess, on that. But as I said, this is the very beginning of what is going to be a large series on the channel. By the time you're seeing this, I probably will have much more actually done. I'm recording the audio and putting these together right now, pretty much because of the fact that I filled up my computer's space in just getting this this far in the park, and so I needed to deal with these videos before I can even move further and do anything else as far as other rides or other design in the park. So getting these videos taken care of, but I do plan on working more in the park itself before I end up actually publishing any of this on YouTube, because I really wanted to be able to have a video come out on a weekly basis for this series. But with this series, I'm not willing at all to rush on what I'm doing. I want each ride and everything else in the park to look a specific way before I actually put it out there to the public. And so with that in mind, this is going to be a series that I'm going to spend a significant quantity of time on. And I'm very happy with that, actually. I'm really enjoying what's going on here. Here you can see I'm wanting to start playing around with the ornamentation on the roof and figuring out what I wanted as far as how this building would look. A lot of these buildings, as I said, I want this sort of be a very old-fashioned traditional theme park, so a lot of these buildings are going to have ornamentation to them as well as lighting. I really like this sort of look for this particular building, so I go with it. And things toward the front of the park are all going to have sort of this different type of ornamentation on each one. Things that are sort of behind the roller coaster, basically, as I said, the reason for this roller coaster is it's significant to the park in that it's so early on. And the roller coaster is going to also work in the fact that it's going to divide the park in that way. Things that are in front are, for the most part, going to be the older rides, sort of the old part of the park. Though there will be a few modern advancements, it's going to be the much earlier time period. Things that are behind this roller coaster are going to be the newer part of the park. You won't see as much of the same level of detailing with different things on the roof, everything of that nature, in that portion of the park. And as I said, it's going to be much more modern. Other than one ride in particular that will be back there, that's really the most important ride in the park for my story. But everything else is going to be sort of newer and fresher in that aspect, and a little bit less themed. You're going to see it almost as if the owners have intentionally tried to modernize what they did back there. Here, though, as I said, I had, at least in my mind, this image of how I expect an old amusement park would have looked, how they would have tried to gain the attention of guests through different lighting and everything of that nature. So that's what I sort of went with here. But going back to what I was saying, I do plan on releasing these videos when I feel that the park is nearing completion, actually. So that way I don't feel any pressure on, oh, I have to get a video out for this week. And, you know, if things change and I decide to start releasing the videos, and then there's a point where it's like, ooh, I just don't get the video out on time, but it's either sacrifice quality or put the video out early, I'm going to go ahead and just make it where that particular week there won't be a video in this series, because I'm not willing to sacrifice the quality on this park. This park is going to take as long as it's going to take. I believe that the quality of my computer will be good enough to hold up to the demands that this park is going to have, because I do expect to put a lot of detail into it. And as I said, I'm not willing to compromise on it. I will have this park looking a specific way before I really open it up fully to the public through YouTube. So we will have to see how that goes. You can see here, you can see the lighting on the building. Trying the ride again here because I want to see how it's going to be as far as in the daytime. And then we will go ahead and end this video with a nighttime ride on the ride in real time, so you can really experience how the ride is, especially with all the lighting that I then put onto the sides here. Right now that lighting's not there. As I said, I probably spent a week or more just on that lighting itself. It was very challenging to do. It is not completely even, and I get that, and that's partially due to the fact that it's really hard in Planet Coaster to get everything to be particularly straight, and it's also because of the fact that such lighting wouldn't be perfect on a ride. I don't want it to be exactly perfect and uniform and straight, because that's just not natural. It would be a little bit off kilter at points. the wind would blow such lighting. It would make it a little bit bent and such. So I don't mind the fact that it's not exactly perfect when you see it. It works for the ride the way I want it. But with that in mind, I do hope you've enjoyed this first episode here of Appleford Amusement Park. I hope it's got your interest up for the rest of the park and for the stories that are going to revolve around this park in general. As I said, I do plan on, as this series continues, to tell you more about Joseph Appleford and Appleford Amusement Park overall and what's really going on in this park. It'll sort of be a spoiler or maybe just a sneak peek at the stories before the stories actually come out. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and just let you enjoy the nighttime ride here. If you did enjoy what I've done in this episode, please go ahead and click that like button. And if you've not already, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you, and hope to see you all again for the next episode of Planet Coaster at Appleford Amusement Park.